On today's show, a Friday mailbag where we're going to talk what's the worst that could happen with the Cavs, plus chances Ty Jerome returns to the team next year. All that and so much more straight ahead on today's edition of Locked On Cavs.
You are Locked On Cavs, your daily Cleveland Cavaliers podcast.
Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's up, everybody? My name's Danny Cunningham. You might know me from my time covering the Cleveland Cavaliers, places like my Substack, The Inside Shot, Cleveland Magazine, 92.3 The Fan, and a number of other stops along the way. I want to say thank you to you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. You can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. Leave us a nice review and be a friend. Tell a friend about the show. Make sure you're subscribed and tell a friend to subscribe as well. And if you're watching on YouTube as we get started here, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest from us here at Locked On Cavs. Wanted to wrap up this week, the last week before really the offseason, I think, fully gets underway. I think we're going to start to get a lot more news, not only with the Cavs, but the rest of the NBA starting next week, because by time, in full disclosure, I am recording this Wednesday night. I don't know what happens Thursday between the Pacers and the Thunder in Game 6. So maybe the NBA season is over. If it's not over, it will be over by the next time a Locked On Cavs episode comes out on Monday, because of potential Game 7, which personally, I'm going to say this right now, I don't think is going to happen. I think the Thunder are going to win last night. Again, no idea. But the offseason will be here. It'll be the week of the NBA draft. Free agency will be right on the horizon, and there will be moves happening both locally and nationally that we will have to talk about. So I wanted to do one last mailbag to sort of wrap up this week and sort of wrap up the pre-offseason offseason, if that makes sense, because things are going to happen. I don't know how active the Cavs exactly are going to be. I know they're making calls. I know they're going to be a team that is going to answer the phone. And that, I think, could lead to an exciting offseason. I think it is a very interesting offseason, if nothing else. But I wanted to get questions and just sort of talk through some things that you guys are interested in on this Friday edition of the show. So we will get started from Tim on Twitter. He asks, with the exception of the Okoro contract situation, what's the worst that can happen if they keep the roster as is? Get bounced in the second round? I realize they want to get better and should try to, but given the constraints, why not just run it back? It's hard for me to come up with an answer worse than that. Like, sure, if the cat, and that is with the caveat being health. If the Cavs run it back, which I think there's a chance they do. I don't think it's the most likely thing, but I do think there's a chance they run it back. If they're healthy, they're going to be a team that wins a lot of games again in the regular season. I don't know if they're going to win 64. I don't know if they're going to win 60, but it's hard for me to look at how talented they are just as a regular season team, which there should be no doubts about them as a regular season team. Of course, that's not the thing that matters. That's not the thing that Cavs fans should care about. But there are not going to be doubts about them in the regular season. No matter what they do, I feel like they can sort of just roll the basketballs out and win 55 plus games next year. And that'll be that. They'll be a top 2 seed in the East because they're that talented, because they've been together, because they know how to play together. Like, they just have all of these built-in advantages that should win them a lot of regular season basketball games. But the worst thing that could happen is that they don't go on a run in the postseason, because that's what this team really has been built for. They're not a team. They're not an organization that should be content with regular season success. Regular season success, I think, should be a prerequisite to the postseason success that they should expect to have and should achieve next year, that they should have achieved this year, and that they expected to achieve this year, and that they failed to achieve this year. All those same goals that they had last year, which were to win the championship. Their goal was to win the championship this year, and the Cavs came up terribly short. That's what makes this a failure. All of those goals are going to be the same next year. They're not going to be a team that is taking a step back in terms of their expectations if they run it back. If they don't run it back, their goal is not going to change. They're still going to be a team that should be expecting to compete for the championship. Now, the worst thing that could happen if they run it back is that, yeah, they lose again in the second round, because that would be 3 straight years of losing in the second round. And at that point, I really think you need to consider making much bigger changes than you would have to make this summer. I think that is the point when Donovan Mitchell's probably on the table as far as somebody who could be traded next summer, because you look at him, he's got 1 year left before a player option. That is something that I do think would have to be on the table if the Cavs do not get to where they want to be. Darius Garland, I think, would be much more on the table as a potential trade piece next summer than he is right now. If the Cavs don't not even achieve their goals, but get much closer to their goals. I mean, if you look at what the Eastern Conference looks like next year, the Cavs are going to be the odds-on favorite on FanDuel. They are the team in the East with the best odds of winning the title right now. If that tells me they're going to be the team that is the odds-on favorite to win the Eastern Conference, they're going to be expected to do that. If they don't do that, that's when I think you could see some pretty significant, pretty drastic changes, because I don't know that a team that continuously comes up short is worth investing into the second apron the way that this upcoming team, I believe, is going to be situated. I believe they're going to be a second apron team, but if they come up short, if they lose in the second round, even if it's not in 5 games, say they make it to 6 or 7 next year, that's still not good enough. I don't think anybody is going to look at that as good enough. And I do think that would be a pretty big waste, because if you look at what Donovan Mitchell has given you in the 3 years that he's been here so far, with where he's at in his career, like, I think that Donovan Mitchell could be a better basketball player next season than he was this past season. I don't know that Donovan Mitchell 2 seasons from now is going to be a better basketball player than he was this season. I think that we are getting very close. If we're not already at it, we might already be at it. There's not a way to know this right now. But I think we are getting very close to seeing Donovan Mitchell's peak. He's in his prime. There will be a peak of that prime. Maybe it was this past year. Maybe it will be this next year. I don't know. We'll have to wait and find out. But it is a little difficult for me to imagine that 2 years from now, when Donovan's in his 30s, that we're talking about, okay, now he is at his peak form as a basketball player. I think there's a good chance it's this upcoming season. Evan Mobley's going to be better. If Darius Garland's healthy in the playoffs, I think that changes a lot of things. So if the Cavs run it back, and primarily if they're healthy, because I do think the health issue is a big issue that mattered in the postseason. It wasn't the whole story. It's not the excuse, but it is something that mattered. But if they're healthy and come up short next year, that's when I think you have to start to look at making some really drastic changes to start to maybe reshape this team as one that is more so built around Evan Mobley than built around Donovan Mitchell. Of course, that's a long way in the future, and that's the worst thing that could happen. The best thing that could happen, which I think there's a chance this happens too, is the Cavs could win the title next year. The Cavs this year, in my opinion, were good enough to win the NBA championship. I really, truly do think that. They got hit with injuries at the wrong time, and they ran into a really good team at the wrong time. But I do think that if things would have broken differently, I don't know if they would have beaten Oklahoma City, but if they would have beat the Pacers, they would have beaten the Knicks. I have zero doubt about that. I still don't look at the Knicks as a team that I think was all that great. So that puts them in the NBA Finals. And if you are in the Finals, I believe you're a team capable of winning the title. And I think the Cavs this year were a team capable of winning the title. If they run it back next year, I have zero reason to think they're not a team capable of winning the title. They need to go out and prove it in the postseason, and that is the thing they've not done. But just because they haven't done that doesn't mean they're not capable of doing it. It is a thing that you need to wait to see to believe, and I understand that because the Cavs have time and time again not done the proper things in the postseason. And I'm speaking more so about what happened against the Knicks a few years ago, which I think matters a little bit less and less every day that passes. Needing 7 games to get past an Orlando Magic team that could not score. And then this year against the Indiana Pacers. And notice I did not say the series against Boston because that is not something that I think should be looked at as a negative for the Cavs. They were never going to win that series no matter how healthy they were. They lost to a far, far better team in a way that I think was pretty respectable, getting to 5 games. But overall, the best case scenario for them is winning the title next year if they run it back. I don't think that's the most likely outcome, but that is on the table. The worst case scenario is with the state of the East, they're going to win a series in the playoffs next year. They're going to be a top 3 seed, probably top 2 seed. And it's really, really difficult for me to see a team that finishes in the play-in in the Eastern Conference next year that's going to be able to push the Cavs and whoever else is a top 2 seed. Like, this is not something I see is going to happen. So no matter what they do, they're going to be a team that wins a playoff series next year. But worst case scenario is we're in the same spot having these same conversations, except I think the tone around this team is and should be much, much different next year than it is right now. Well, what if they don't run it back? What if they make changes? Who's more likely to not be on the roster? I'm going to talk about a couple of former All-Stars next right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Car Gurus. Shopping for a car should be exciting, not exhausting, but between the confusing prices, hidden fees, and so much more, it can feel overwhelming. It can, trust me, been there before. I think we all have. That's why Car Gurus is the place to go. They help you cut through the noise and show you the best deals with full and complete confidence. They've got over 4 million listings, and Car Gurus has more new and used cars than any other major online marketplace in the United States. They verify dealers, provide real price analysis, and give you the tools and data you need to make the right choice without second guessing yourself. Car Gurus makes it easy to compare vehicles side by side with unbiased deal ratings. Plus, they've got the price drop alerts, so you know exactly when the perfect car for you is available for your budget. Something very important when you're buying a car, believe it or not, the budget does matter. So buy or sell your next car today with Car Gurus at cargurus.com. That is CARGURUS.com. Again, cargurus.com to make sure your big deal is the best deal. Again, go to cargurus.com today. Today's show is also brought to you by Epicor. Every team knows the value of hard work, of taking pride in what you build, and practicing every detail to get the best results. But no one player, no matter how amazing, can do it all alone. Working together makes getting the win easier. And at Epicor, the All-Stars are the hardworking manufacturers and distributors who create and deliver the things we all need, from aerospace to electrical to medical devices. Epicor ERP solutions are created by industry experts to help make every day easier. Seeing your whole supply chain is easier. Managing logistics is easier. Responding to price changes is easier. From small businesses with big dreams to growing enterprises with global visions, Epicor will equip you with the right tools to move forward, think ahead, and lead the way. Because as the clock ticks down, you need to make the most of every hardworking minute. Easier doesn't cut corners. Easier takes the lead. Discover your success at easierwithepicor.com. That is easierwithepicor.com. Thank you again for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, anywhere else. Make sure you drop us a 5-star rating. And next question comes from FinDog on Twitter. Asks, less likely to be on the first game roster, Darius Garland or Jarrett Allen? I think the answer here is Allen. While the Cavs will pick up the phone if somebody calls them about Darius Garland, I don't think they're going to trade him. I don't think they want to trade him. I think they would need to be blown away by an offer for Darius Garland. I have talked a lot on this podcast about viewing the core of the Cavs as 3 guys, as Garland, Mitchell, and Mobley, notably omitting Jarrett Allen because I don't think he's a core player. And I do think that that's sort of how he's starting to be viewed a little bit more around the league. And I kind of think the Cavs are starting to view him that way. Like the core 4 is a nice saying, but I think he's a high-end role player. And I think those guys are expendable, and more so expendable than Darius Garland is. I don't think Darius Garland's going to be on the Cavs forever, but I do think he's going to be on the Cavs when the season opens up this year. I think there's a chance they run it back. As I talked about in the first segment, I think there's a chance they run it back with the core group of guys, not the core 4, but even getting into Max Strus, DeAndre Hunter, bringing back Ty Jerome, who I'm going to talk about here in a second, maybe Sam Merrill coming back, Dean Wade. Like, there's a chance that this roster looks very, very similar to what it did last year. I don't think that would be the best path forward, but I do think there's a chance that that happens. You can't rule that out. Certainly not on June 20th right now. But I think that it's more likely Darius Garland. Well, and I guess the caveat should be, like, I would not necessarily expect Darius Garland to be playing in the season opening game because of that toe surgery that he had last week that is going to cost him 4 or 5 months, which, of course, if you can do math on the calendar, takes you into the 3rd week of the season at the 5-month mark. So I don't know that Darius Garland will be playing game 1. Like, there's probably a better chance Jarrett Allen is on the floor for the Cavs game 1 than Darius Garland is, but actually on the roster, I think there's a better chance Darius Garland is on the roster when the season begins than Jarrett Allen is. Satch also asked a question that I kind of want to just piggyback there. It says, are the Cavs standing pat? I would guess no. I would guess that they are going to make some sort of moves. I do not think that the 15 guys that were on the roster at the end of the season in terms of standard contracts are going to all be back. So that would say, no, they're not standing pat. That's also cheating the question, which I'm not going to do to you, Satch. I think that there will be changes to the rotation. I don't think if you look at the playoff rotation against Miami, that was 10 guys. So you've got the starting 5 plus DeAndre Hunter, Ty Jerome, Sam Merrill, Dean Wade, Isaac Okoro. So you've got your 10 guys. I would bet 7 of those guys are back. I think there are going to be changes there. I would bet 7 of those guys are back in Cleveland. Next question comes from Angelo. Asks, the chances they re-sign Ty Jerome. I think this is one of the more important questions of the offseason for the Cavs because Ty had a very poor playoff performance against the Indiana Pacers. He was terrible in that series, and there's not really a nice way to say that. He hit a couple of shots in game 5, but for the most part, he had a series to forget. If he is better in that series, the Cavs probably win it. If he doesn't go 1 of 14, I believe it was, in game 1, the Cavs probably, or maybe it was game 2, the Cavs probably win that game. But those are the things that happen. How much did that affect his value on the free agent market? I don't know. I don't think Ty is a starting caliber point guard. And I think that is something that is going to be important to think about as we look at what he's offered from other teams. Now, there's the Brooklyn Nets who have cap space. I do not imagine the Nets are going to be a team that uses cap space on Ty Jerome. I think if you have cap space, you want to try and reel in a big fish with it. Ty Jerome is a very nice player, in my opinion. I think he's a good guy to have in your locker room. He's a player I think you want on your team. Not a very big fish. He's not a guy that I think you would want to spend cap space on. So that leads us to using something like the taxpayer or the non-taxpayer mid-level exception, which is around $14 million next year. That is an area where I think Ty could kind of be financially. I don't know if I would want to give him that whole thing if I'm a team, but the Cavs can pay him sort of in that neighborhood. And if that is the case, and I don't know that they're going to be willing to go all the way up to it. I don't know if they're willing to pay him the maximum amount they're going to pay him. I think that's going to maybe depend on some other things. Like if they can find somebody that would like to trade for Isaac Okoro and his $11 million salary, I think that makes the Ty Jerome equation a little bit easier, because when you're paying Ty Jerome, those dollars that you would be spending on him, it's not as if you're only spending that money. They are going to get crushed with a tax bill in order to retain Ty Jerome. So I do think that this is probably something that I view as like 40-60. Ty Jerome comes back. It's obviously not a foregone conclusion he's going to be gone, but I would say it's more likely than not he's playing elsewhere next year. I do think the Cavs would like him to be back, but I think the reported struggles in finding somebody that would like to have Isaac Okoro at that price on their basketball team is something that complicates this. If Isaac Okoro had walked last summer, or the Cavs had given him the qualifying offer last summer instead of the 3-year, $33 million contract he got, I think they'd be in a different spot right now. And it's a tough place to be, because I do think they were in a position where they didn't want him to walk for nothing. But sort of when you sign those contracts, and I was talking with somebody about this on Wednesday, when you sign somebody to a don't want to let that guy walk away for nothing contract, it almost never turns out to be a good contract. And this Isaac Okoro contract has already kind of turned out to be a bad one. And I think it is it's a pretty important thing to find a way to move that if they want to keep Ty Jerome. I think they're a better basketball team if they do keep Ty Jerome, because I think that depth matters. And he was not good in that Pacers series, but he was also playing a role that was oversized for him. Ty is best, in my opinion, in the role that he was in the regular season with the Cavs. He was not a starter, played 19 minutes a game. He could come in, he could thrive in those 19 minutes. But when you see him have to play 28, 29, 30 minutes in high stakes games, that's not a recipe for success. Ty Jerome in the postseason was awful, but he also wasn't set up for success. It's not the Cavs' fault he wasn't set up for success. Darius Garland being injured did that. That is a byproduct of a star guard dealing with a pretty nasty foot injury. So that is something that you do have to think about when you're evaluating Ty Jerome. But it's also not a situation where I would say trade Darius Garland because you have Ty Jerome and Ty can pick up the slack. I don't think that's a place you want to be. But I do think that having him back is helpful. I think having him back in the playoffs in the role, if you go look at what he was in those first two games against Miami, where he was in his normal role, he looked like a much different player. And of course, that Miami team, much, much different than the Indiana Pacers. That is not a fair comparison to make between those two postseason series, but just the role that he was in, the comfort that he found, that's the sort of thing that you look at and say, okay, well, if he's there, does he have as bad a series against Pacers? Probably not. Probably not. But I think that if they keep Ty, their chances of winning a championship next year are better than if he signs elsewhere and they lose him and they do not have a way to replace him. And I think that is ultimately the thing that is worth mentioning the most when it comes to that situation. I have a question about a two-way, and we're going to talk about the two-ways, especially with the NBA draft coming up. That is straight ahead right here on Locked On Cavs. Today's show is brought to you by Wayfair. There's nothing like stepping into your own outdoor space and feeling like you've escaped to a personal oasis. If you're wanting to update your patio this season, I love a good patio. I truly do. Wayfair has made it so easy to turn that patio into a space that feels like yours, comfortable, stylish, and ready for summer. I love summer. I love patios. I love a good patio that has been helped out by Wayfair, that has been turned from just a run-of-the-mill patio to a great patio because someone went to Wayfair. Wayfair is everything you need to level up your outdoor space. Conversation sets, outdoor bars, fire pits, hot tubs, gazebos. Love a good gazebo too. Truly do. And yes, the perfect string lights, because string lights are necessary, in my opinion, when you are putting together the perfect outdoor patio, deck, outdoor bar. String lights are always a great touch. They really are. There are not many things that I look at and say, yeah, you know, I think I could use less string lights here. I think more often than I was like, you know what, this could use a little bit more light. String lights would be a good idea. So if that sounds like something that you want, because of course you want your backyard to have the feel of being on a resort, just without the resort price tag. So I know that sounds like something you want. What you need to do is you need to stop waiting and you need to make your outdoor space your dream oasis today with Wayfair and enjoy it all summer long. Head to wayfair.com right now to shop a huge outdoor selection. That is wayfair.com, Wayfair.com. Wayfair, every style, every home. Thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. Like I said earlier, you can find the show on YouTube. But if you're watching right now, do me a favor, hit that thumbs up button for me, click subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the latest Locked On Cavs. Big Bill asks, do you think Nae'Qwan Tomlin gets signed to a big league contract or brought back on a two-way again next year? Well, Tomlin is on a 2-year, two-way deal, I believe. So that means that he will be in training camp with the Cavs. I imagine he will be on the Cavs summer league team in Vegas coming up next month. We've not had a roster for that yet, but I would imagine that he is going to be on the summer league roster. I do not think the Cavs are going to use a standard contract on him just yet. There could come a time where they would like to elevate him to that. And what the end of the roster looks like for the Cavs, I do think will be an interesting thing, because they have to have 14 guys under contract. You can for stretches of the season have 13 guys. Like, I believe you're allowed to do it 2 weeks at a time for 4 weeks total throughout the season. I would be surprised with where the Cavs are at financially if they had 15 guys on the roster all season long. I think they would prefer to have an open roster spot and keep it at 14. They did that for most of the year last year. They only signed Chuma Okeke at the end of the season, and they signed Javonte Green after they had made the trade already, which was a 2-for-1 trade, sending out Karis LeVert and George Niang, only bringing back DeAndre Hunter. So they had an additional roster spot to use there. So I would imagine that Nae'Qwan Tomlin going to be somebody that is on a 2-way contract, at least to start the season. Maybe that changes. Maybe he earns a call up to a standard contract. Maybe he finds his way into the rotations like the 10th guy, and the Cavs have to give him a standard contract. But unless something drastic changes that I don't foresee coming, I would be very surprised if Tomlin is not on a 2-way contract at the very least to start the season with the Cavs. I think that makes the most sense for everybody involved. I think that there is a chance that he develops into somebody that could be an NBA player just because he's so raw with his, I guess the best way to say this is just lack of basketball experience, because he's such a late bloomer. So that is something that I do think could be potentially in the cards at some point, but I'd be very, very surprised if he is not on a 2-way with the Cavs to start the season at the very least. But thank you for making Locked On Cavs your first listen today and every day. As I said earlier, you can find the show anywhere you get your podcasts, Apple, Spotify, or anywhere else. Great week. The NBA draft is here. The offseason is here. The real offseason is here, not this offseason stuff we've been doing for the last 6 weeks. It's time to really start digging into free agency, trades, all that, the draft. It's all coming your way next week right here on Locked On Cavs. So make sure you're subscribed anywhere you get your podcast. And if you're watching on YouTube, hit that thumbs up button as we get out of here. Click subscribe. Hit that notification bell. I'll be back on Monday talking about the offseason.